All right, guys. I hope you're good and I hope you're well. So today we will be covering series circuit introduction, right? We want to talk about series circuit. This is grade 10 work, which will be the foundation for the grade 11 work and grade 12, right? So it all starts here. So I want to talk about the characteristics of a series circuit. We need to talk about the characteristics of the series circuit. So the first characteristic is that look at this components, right? We did components of the circuit in grade 9 and grade 8. We have a cell, we have resistor, we have ammeter, right? So now in a series circuit, what you realize here is that all the components in the circuit, they're connected to the same wire, right? So that's the first characteristics, that the components are connected to the same wire. You can see that the cell, the resistors, and the ammeter, they're all connected to the same wire, right? So now, let's talk about the second characteristic, right? So, like, before you can understand the concept, you need to understand the characteristics, right? Now, the second characteristic, let's talk about the current. Now, we know that the current, the cell is the source of energy for the circuit. We know that the long line is a positive terminal, the short line is a negative terminal. So your current always flows from the positive terminal back to the negative terminal. So your current will go in this direction, flow throughout this wire, past this resistors, past this ammeter, go back to the cell via the negative terminal. As long as the switch is closed, it's a continuous cycle. The current flows, just like that, right? Now, what I want to teach you is that on the surface of the conducting wire, we have electrons, right? Now, the cell has energy. When the switch is closed, the cell uses the energy of the cell to energize the electrons so that they can move around, right? The electrons can start to flow in the circuit. And we know that the rate of flow of the charge, which charge the electron, is equals to current. So current is the rate of flow of charge. And we have two charges, proton and electrons. So only electrons are responsible for the generation of current, right? So now, look at the wire. We said the components are connected to the same wire. Therefore, it leads us to the second characteristics that the current has only one pathway in a series circuit. There's only one pathway for current to flow. That's the second characteristic. So there is only one pathway. Right? So there's only one pathway for current to flow because all the components are connected to one wire. Now, let's talk about the third characteristic, right? Let's talk about the third characteristic. If there is one pathway for current, then it then tells us that these resistors and all the components in this circuit, they experience the same current. The same current is passing through these resistors, right? So that's the third characteristic. Since all there's only one pathway for current to flow, it means all the components that are connected to that wire will experience the same current. So the resistors experience the same current, right? That's the third characteristic. Remember, the components are connected to the same wire, one pathway for current. Therefore, the resistors must experience the same current. The fourth characteristic talks about the voltage. The energy from the cell, this voltage, must be shared amongst the resistors. Now, we then call the resistors in a series circuit voltage dividers. So, resistors are voltage dividers. They divide the voltage. But now the question is, how do they divide the voltage? Which one gets more voltage? Which one gets less voltage? Now that one depends on the size of the resistor. In a series circuit, the bigger the resistor or the bigger resistor gets more voltage. The small resistor gets less voltage. It depends on the size of the resistor. So the bigger resistor gets more voltage, and the smaller resistor gets less voltage, right? That's the fifth characteristic. Now the sixth characteristic talks about what will happen to the current if we increase the resistance. Now, remember the role of the resistor is to try and resist the flow of current. So when you add more resistors, you are actually decreasing the current strength. If we were to put another resistor, let me quickly draw it. If maybe somewhere here, I was to put another resistor, right? Maybe I call it the 2 ohm. This will increase the total resistance of the circuit. And if the total resistance of the circuit increases, the total current strength decreases. So more resistors increase total resistance of the circuit and decreases total current strength, right? It's like you're now fighting more people. When you're fighting more people, it becomes hard for you. You cannot win. It's unlike fighting one person. When you're fighting like 3 or 4, they might defeat you. So the last characteristic, we talk about the cell. So when you add more cells, you're actually increasing the current strength. Why? Because the energy from the cell is the one that is used to make the electrons flow, and then the flow of electrons generates current. So let's say, for example, this one 8-volt cell generated 0.5 ampere of current, total current. If we add another 8-volt cell, then that means we are now increasing the current. So there's a chance that you might now produce another 0.5. So then 0.5 plus 0.5 is 1 ampere. So increasing the cells or adding more cells to the series circuit increases the current strength. That's number 7. I'll just write it. Let me just write it here. Number 7. So when you're increasing cells, you increase current strength. So this is the introduction to the series circuit, and I hope you guys learned a lot. So from here, you can then, we will then introduce Ohm's law. How do you calculate current? How do you calculate resistance? How do you calculate voltage, right? Remember, the resistors are voltage dividers. How are we going to get the voltage for resistor 1, the voltage for resistor 2? All those things, we need to do the calculation, right? So that will be in the next video. I hope you guys learned a lot, and this is TS Tutoring, and we're signing out. Thank you guys for watching the video.